Hello, my good friend. I am sincerely glad to welcome you once again to our quiet, secluded haven, to that special space where the usually relentless rush of time yields its place to deep, meaningful contemplation, and the intrusive noise of the modern, ever-wakeful world gradually dissolves, melting into the silence of bygone ages. Today, together, hand in hand, soul to soul, we shall embark on a long and unhurried journey, a route not marked on the glossy pages of modern atlases or on the screens of your electronic devices. We will venture into an era when the world itself felt entirely different, as vast as an ocean, full of uncharted, hidden mysteries, and a slow, yet mighty and inexorable movement, like the current of great rivers. Mentally, by the power of our imagination, we will transport ourselves to ancient, enigmatic Mesopotamia, to that very blessed land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, to where, like the first flowers after a long winter, the first great civilizations of humanity were born and blossomed. This will happen long before words so familiar to us today, such as globalization, high-speed internet, or artificial intelligence, would even enter people's lexicon and acquire their current meaning. We will become an unseen, silent companion to an ancient merchant, a simple but courageous man whose daily life is an endless, dusty road under a scorching sun, whose temporary, always ready to move home is a caravan slowly but stubbornly trudging through sands and mountains, and whose daily, arduous work is the vital, age-old tradition and ritual of exchanging the generous gifts of fertile land and the skillful fruits of meticulous human craftsmanship. This will not be a dynamic tale of loud, fateful battles that changed the maps of the ancient world, or of the intricate webs of sophisticated palace intrigues that seethed behind the high walls of royal residences. Our goal today, my friend, is entirely different, more subtle and profound. We will strive with our whole being to feel the very subtle breath of everyday life in that distant, almost mythical epoch. We will attempt to sense the unique texture of that simple yet meaningful existence, to touch a world where every step taken on the scorching earth, every attentive glance cast upon the surrounding world, every random sound carried from the silence, was filled with its own special, unique weight and deep, at times sacred, significance. This story has been created with great love and sincere care, specifically to help you fully relax, let go of all the anxieties and worries accumulated during a long, bustling day, and perhaps, smoothly, imperceptibly to yourself, sink into the healing, restorative embrace of calm and deep sleep. If such quiet, meditative, almost dreamlike wanderings through the boundless waves of time find a warm, living echo in your soul, if they help you find inner peace and harmony, you can offer your support to our channel so that we may continue to create similar atmospheric videos for you and for other souls seeking tranquility. And also, if it's not too much trouble for you, I would be very grateful if you would write in the comments under this video from which city or distant country you are listening to us now, and what time you're home, perhaps antique chronometer shows. It is wonderfully and incredibly pleasant to realize that somewhere out there, very far away, under another patch of this vast shared sky, someone else, just like you, seeking silence, is falling asleep to this quiet story, becoming an invisible yet so important part of our warm, soulful community of calm. And now, please, my friend, dim the lights in your room if you haven't already done so. Settle into your chair or bed so that your body is as comfortable, at ease, and relaxed as possible. Allow every muscle, every tense ligament, every single cell of your tired body to completely, utterly relax. Close your eyes if you feel the desire, or simply allow your gaze to soften, to gently unfocus, drifting into the nothingness, into the void before you. Take a very deep, very slow, life-giving breath in through your nose, and an equally smooth, calm, releasing exhalation through your mouth. Repeat this simple exercise once more, a slow, deep inhalation, and a quiet, calm, care-releasing exhalation. Very good. You feel the wave of relaxation washing over your body. We are ready to begin our long, meditative immersion. You slowly, very smoothly emerge from sleep. Not from the sharp, piercing, and insistent signal of a modern electronic alarm clock that mercilessly tears you from Morpheus's embrace, but from an almost imperceptible change in the very density and temperature of the air around you. The night's almost palpable coolness of the boundless, silent desert, still gently, like a caring mother, envelops your sleeping body. It's like a fine, slightly damp linen coverlet, dewy from the morning, offering a final moment of bliss before awakening. You lie on a rather firm, yet familiar mat, skillfully woven from dried river reeds or palm leaves. Its coarse texture is barely perceptible through the fabric of your simple clothing. You are covered by a thick, rather heavy cloak of undyed camel or sheep wool, which remarkably well retains the remnants of your body heat accumulated during the night. Through a small, unevenly ajar gap in the rough, tarred canvas of your simple traveling tent, or from under the edge of a makeshift awning hastily constructed from tanned hides stretched over poles, the very first, most timid and gentle strip of dawnlight seeps through. It is not yet golden, not bright, but rather a tenderly pink, pearlescent hue, like the inner surface of a rare seashell, or like the thinnest petal of a wild desert iris. This sliver of light is a silent harbinger of a new, long, perhaps difficult, but always expectation-filled day. The air around you, not yet warmed by the rays of the rising sun, is filled with a whole bouquet of distinct, intermingled aromas. You take a deep breath and begin to distinguish them individually. There's the faint, barely perceptible, bittersweet scent of smoke from the watchfire that has almost completely burned down overnight, diligently maintained by the rotating guards of your caravan. You clearly detect the specific, rather sharp, pungent, yet so familiar smell of camel hair, mixed with the even more subtle aroma of the ancient desert itself. The smell of eternal, fine dust, which here, in boundless Mesopotamia, seems to have permeated absolutely everything. Every thread of your clothing, every hair on your head, even the taste of water and food. And through these dominant scents, like a delicate musical note, a barely noticeable, yet distinctly discernible, slightly cloying sweet note of ripe, fleshy dates wafts through. One of your companions, the earliest and most resourceful, has already untied his leather pouch and taken them out for the upcoming meager morning meal. Your hearing, sharpened by long hours of the desert's almost absolute nocturnal silence, begins to pick up the first, still very quiet sounds of the awakening camp. There's the quiet, guttural, slightly disgruntled snorting, and the measured, heavy shuffling of calloused feet from the enormous camels. They too, with their animal instinct, sense the approaching dawn and the inevitable start of a new workday, full of travel. You also hear the low, guttural, unhurried, as if still sleepy, voices of your caravan comrades. They exchange short, laconic phrases in their familiar dialect, trying not to disturb the fragile, almost sacred morning stillness that has not yet fully yielded its rights to the encroaching, noisy day. somewhere very close, a soft but clear and distinct metallic clink is heard. It's most likely one of the camel drivers, the most responsible and caring, meticulously checking the condition of the copper buckles and rings on his favorite camel's heavy leather harness, or carefully adjusting and tightening the straps on the heavy saddlebags so the load doesn't shift en route. Each of these barely perceptible sounds is painfully, to the last note, familiar to you. Each is in its usual, established place. All this together creates the unique morning symphony of caravan life, which you have heard hundreds, if not thousands, of times. It is predictable and therefore deeply, almost hypnotically, soothes your soul, setting the tone for the long day. Slowly, with visible enjoyment, you stretch your entire body, feeling how every muscle, every ligament, every joint of your organism reluctantly but inevitably awakens from the long night's sleep. The muscles in your back, shoulders, and legs still hold a dull, deep, aching fatigue from yesterday's particularly long, grueling trek under the mercilessly scorching midday sun. But along with this fatigue, a barely noticeable habitual tension is already stirring within them, an inner readiness for the new day's journey, for new trials, which this day will undoubtedly bring. You finally cast off the heavy yet so cozy woolen blanket. The cool, slightly damp desert air immediately, yet gently, touches your sleep-warmed skin, pleasantly invigorating, refreshing, and definitively banishing the last, sweetest remnants of your night dreams. You feel the fog in your head dissipate. You leisurely sit up on your mat, which rustles quietly beneath you. You run a hand through your sleep-tangled, dust-stiffened hair, shaking off invisible fine grains of sand, and, perhaps, the remnants of some vague, fleeting dreams that are already almost forgotten. Your gaze, still a little sleepy, involuntarily turns eastward, to where the narrow strip of light on the distant horizon grows wider, brighter, more defined, to where the silent night sky is already beginning to slowly play with all imaginable and unimaginable shades of pure gold, ripe orange, and molten, boiling crimson. This is the majestic, immense, all-seeing, and utterly silent sky of ancient Mesopotamia. Beneath this enormous, awe-inspiring dome, you are but a tiny, almost invisible speck of sand in the gigantic, boundless desert of time and being. But, despite this, your simple, uncomplicated life, your arduous, danger-filled path, your modest but honest labor, all of it has its own inherent significance, its own deep, though perhaps not always understood by you, meaning in this ancient, harsh, yet in its own way, just world. Around you, in the still half-asleep camp, a quiet, familiar, long-established to the smallest detail activity, slowly but surely and inevitably, like the sunrise, begins to unfold. Here, no one ever runs around headlessly, shouts without special need, or fusses unnecessarily. Every movement of any caravan member is extremely measured, economical, almost ritualistic. All actions are honed not just by years of personal, accumulated experience, but perhaps by entire generations of such difficult, deprivation-filled nomadic trading life. You see several women from your caravan, their faces almost entirely hidden by dark, thick veils, stooping low over yesterday's campfire site, very carefully, almost holding their breath, gently fanning the still glowing embers under a layer of ash in a small makeshift hearth built from a few suitably sized stones. They are preparing a simple but sufficiently nourishing breakfast for the long day. Very soon, the appetizing, homely smell of freshly baked, unleavened flatbreads, The staple, irreplaceable bread of desert nomads, will spread throughout the camp. These flatbreads will most likely be served with a generous handful of sweet, sun-dried dates, which provide quick, almost instant energy, or perhaps a small piece of very salty, rock-hard sheep's or goat's cheese, which keeps well on the road. And, if you are particularly lucky with supplies today, there will also be a little tart, slightly sour camel or goat milk, which, for economy, is generously diluted with precious drinking water from the communal leather water skins. You slowly rise from your mat, stretching your stiff limbs, and unhurriedly, trying not to stumble in the semi-darkness over scattered belongings, approach the large communal cauldron or special clay jug with a narrow neck where all the drinking water for the caravan is carefully stored. One of your companions, usually the camp attendant, hands you your personal, well-known clay bowl. It's rough in appearance, perhaps with small chips along the edges, but very sturdy and convenient. A little lukewarm, slightly bitter tasting, but oh so precious water is poured into it. Water in these sun-scorched arid lands is a true treasure. It is life itself. It is the ultimate value. You drink very slowly, in small, economical sips, almost savoring each drop, and feel how this life-giving, cool moisture gently soothes and pleasantly revives your throat, parched from the long night, how it gradually penetrates every tired cell of your body, filling it with new strength. The taste of this water is very simple, slightly earthy, sometimes with a leathery tang from the water skin, but at this moment, it seems to you the most wonderful, most exquisite of all possible tastes on earth. Then comes the turn of the meager but so important morning meal. You take in your hands a still warm flatbread, just removed from the hot stone. It is baked from the coarsest, dark, unsifted barley, or, less often, wheat flour, possibly with a large amount of bran for satiety. It was baked directly on flat river stones heated intensely on an open fire, or even simply in hot, gray ash, which gives it a characteristic, slightly bitter, somewhat smoky aroma and taste. You carefully break off a small piece, feeling its dense, slightly tough, somewhat chewy texture with your fingers. This simple food nourishes. It gives your body the necessary calories and strength for the long, trial-filled day that already awaits you. You chew every piece very thoroughly, unhurriedly, knowing full well the true price of this simple, yet so vital food in desert conditions. While you leisurely breakfast, sitting on your mat a little apart from the main fire, your eyes attentively, almost automatically, observe all the numerous stages of the complex preparation of your large caravan for its imminent departure. Over there, slightly aside from the main camp, the oldest and most experienced camel driver of your caravan, a gray-bearded old man with a face etched with deep wrinkles, like the bark of an ancient dried tree, and eyes faded from constant sun and wind, very carefully and scrupulously inspects the hooves of one of the most valuable cargo camels. He attentively checks for fresh, painful cracks from yesterday's long journey over sharp, razor-like stones, or for chafes and sores from sand constantly getting under the straps. His calloused, yet surprisingly sensitive and gentle fingers move very confidently, almost caressingly. He quietly and monotonously mutters something to the huge animal, some ancient, generationally passed down incantations for luck on the journey, or simply soothing, encouraging words in his native, guttural language. And this enormous, mighty, and usually stubborn camel stands perfectly still without flinching, completely trusting this wise man, on whose care and experience its health and well-being on the road directly depend. Gradually, the most responsible and laborious stage of the morning preparation begins, loading all the various goods onto the animals' backs. Your personal merchandise. It's not just some soulless things or objects. For you, it is a part of yourself, the visible result of your many days of painstaking labor or long, sometimes exhausting, negotiations with suppliers. These are your most cherished hopes for a good profit, for improving your family's life, and for a safe, swift return home. Perhaps it's several heavy, voluminous bales, stuffed with high-quality, thoroughly washed and carefully combed sheep or camel wool, which was then skillfully dyed by masters in deep, rich, durable, and very expensive colors. For example, precious, almost black indigo, or royal, blood-red purple, or sunny, cheerful saffron. You, personally, very carefully, feel each such bale, checking the reliability and integrity of its outer packaging of coarse, thick burlap or specially treated, durable oxhide. Or maybe your main, most valuable commodity is fragile, yet so beautiful and sought-after painted ceramics. These could be elegant, thin-walled vessels for expensive wine or olive oil, or deep, wide bowls for festive meals, or tall, slender jugs for cool water. Each of these fragile items is carefully, with great caution, packed in special woven baskets, generously interspersed with soft straw and dry river reeds, and then firmly tied with strong ropes so that it can withstand the inevitable, strong jolting during the long and difficult journey over rough terrain. You see how the first, still slanting rays of the rising morning sun play and shimmer on the smooth, shiny, multicolored glazed surface of these beautiful items, reflecting off them in fleeting, rainbow-like glints. Or perhaps, this time you are carrying something even heavier, more valuable, and more dangerous to transport. For example, several standard weight ingots of pure copper, the red gold of the desert, or gray, soft tin, necessary for bronze production, or even, if you are particularly lucky, a few small but very expensive ingots of silver, rare in these parts. They glint dully, mattily in the scattered, soft morning light, lying on coarse fabric. They are very heavy, and each such small ingot promises you a very good, substantial profit, but at the same time requires special, increased security on the road. Or it might be several large, full-weight sacks, tightly packed with choice, clean, sifted grain, for example, golden as the sun barley, from which simple bread for the poor is baked in cities and thick, intoxicating beer is brewed, or heavy, vitreous wheat, which will go into making the finest snow-white flatbreads for the tables of noble and wealthy city dwellers. Each of these diverse types of goods has its own unique, well-known-to-you smell, its unique, characteristic texture, which you can identify even with your eyes closed, its tangible, familiar-to-your-hands weight. You know all these goods down to the smallest, most insignificant details, like the back of your own hand, because your success often depends on this knowledge. Experienced camel drivers, accustomed to this arduous work since childhood, their movements honed by years of practice, deftly and surprisingly quickly, almost playfully, distribute all this motley and heavy cargo across the broad, strong backs of the hardy, patient camels. They very carefully monitor the even distribution of the load on each animal and the correct balance of the baggage on both sides, so that it is easier for the camels to walk and so that the cargo does not slip and chafe their backs during the long trek. As they do so, one can hear the prolonged creaking of thick leather straps being pulled tight on knots, the dull thud of heavy bales, woven baskets, and massive wooden crates striking each other during loading, All these characteristic sounds, all these familiar day after day repeated actions, they are an integral, routine part of your morning camp life. It is familiar to you to the point of automatism, down to the smallest details, and therefore seems somehow particularly predictable, reliable, and even somewhat calming. In this measured, organized morning bustle, there is undoubtedly its own special, austere, masculine poetry. The poetry of hard, honest physical labor, long, patient waiting, and the ever-present, hidden deep in the soul hope for the best. Finally, when the sun has risen noticeably above the horizon and the last preparations are complete, the leader of your caravan, usually the oldest and most respected man, gives a long-awaited short, guttural signal or a wave of his hand. The caravan slowly, very unhurriedly, as if reluctantly, moves out from the stopping place. Like an enormous, clumsy, many-legged prehistoric monster, it slowly stretches out in a long, winding serpent along the barely visible, centuries-trodden caravan trail, which disappears like a thin thread beyond the very edge of the visible horizon, lost in the shimmering haze of a scorching air. You either sit proudly atop your personal, well-trained camel, swaying gently in the saddle in time with its measured, springy steps, and look out at the world from its height. Or, if a particular stretch of the journey is especially difficult and dangerous, or you simply want to stretch your legs, stiff from long sitting, you walk beside your animal, holding its reins firmly. This rhythmic, lulling, almost hypnotic swaying in the saddle, or the equally monotonous, distinct rhythm of your own steps on the ground, gradually falls into perfect unison with the rhythm of your breathing, with the slow, lazy flow of your thoughts, which wander somewhere far away. The sun, that merciless master of the desert, slowly but inexorably and inevitably climbs higher and higher in the cloudless, faded to white sky. Its scorching heat becomes ever stronger, ever more palpable, almost physically tangible, burning, exposed skin. You prudently throw a spacious, light, but dense covering of coarse, unbleached linen or cotton fabric, or perhaps thin camel wool, over your head and shoulders, which somewhat protects you from the mercilessly blazing, almost vertical rays of the midday sun. The hot, dry air begins to shimmer and flow over the sand or stones heated to their limit, creating bizarre, deceptive, ever-changing mirages on the horizon, which so often confuse inexperienced travelers. The boundless, silent desert stretches around you in all directions, as far as your trained eye can see. Endless, smoothly flowing waves of golden sand dunes, which give way to vast, bare stony plateaus, where only occasionally one finds solitary, prickly clumps of dry gray grass or low-growing shrubs. The earth here is scorched by the sun to its limit, cracked from heat and lack of moisture, like the very old, calloused skin of an ancient elder. Gradually, all surrounding sounds subside, as if dissolving into this all-consuming, ringing silence of the desert, broken only by the monotonous, barely audible, eternal whisper of the wind. This wind constantly sifts through myriads of fine grains of sand, creating a quiet, soporific rustle, and also by the soft, almost melodic chiming of small bronze or copper bells, which are prudently tied to the collars or baggage of some of the lead camels in the caravan. This quiet, but constant, slightly tinkling sound. It is like the invisible pulse of the caravan itself, its soul. It prevents the surrounding silence from becoming too oppressive, too crushing. It calms the nerves. It prevents you from feeling completely alone and helplessly lost in this boundless, hostile, primordial emptiness. You also constantly hear the barely perceptible, yet familiar to the ear creak of poorly lubricated leather straps and wooden parts of saddles and packs rubbing against each other from constant movement. You hear the quiet, rhythmic, heavy breathing and occasional disgruntled snorting of the huge, hardy animals walking beside you. You hear the barely perceptible rustle of your own well-worn leather sandals, or bare, calloused feet on the loose, hot sand or small, sharp pebbles, if you are currently choosing to walk to give your camel a rest. The smells of the desert. At first, superficial glance, they might seem deceptively simple, poor, and even monotonous. But for you, a man who has spent more than 1 year in the desert, they are full of many subtle, barely perceptible nuances and shades. It is, first and foremost, of course, the ubiquitous, incomparable smell of sand heated white-hot by the scorching sun. It is the sharp, dry, slightly nostril-tickling smell of eternal dust, which settles as a fine, invisible layer on your face, on your clothes, gets into your nostrils and mouth, and grates unpleasantly on your teeth. Sometimes a sudden gust of hot, dry wind carries from afar, from unknown lands, a barely perceptible, very fine, bittersweet, spicy, or resinous aroma of some particularly hardy, unknown desert herb or some modest, almost invisible wildflower, which by some incomprehensible miracle managed to find enough life force to survive and even bloom in these merciless, almost waterless, harsh conditions. And, of course, you are constantly, relentlessly accompanied by the strong, specific animal smell of your faithful companions, the camels. This smell is already so familiar to you that you have almost stopped noticing it. It mixes with the more subtle, barely perceptible aromas of the various goods you carry in your pack. This might be, for example, the sweet, intoxicating scent of expensive exotic incenses, like frankincense or myrrh, if you are particularly lucky this time to be carrying such a valuable, light, and non-perishable cargo. Or it might be the pungent, slightly sharp smell of fresh tree resin, used in cities for boat building and various religious rituals. Or it is simply the dry, slightly musty, but so familiar smell of unprocessed wool, tanned hides, or sun-dried fish. You gaze for long hours into the distance, where the trembling, uneven line of the far horizon almost indistinguishably merges with the pale, faded from unbearable heat, whitish sky. The horizon here, in the open desert, seems truly endless, absolutely unattainable, as if it is constantly fleeing from you. And time itself in these harsh lands flows completely differently, not like in the noisy, bustling, ever-hurrying cities. It is measured here not by the strokes of water or sand clocks, which you don't even have, but by long, exhausting, day-long treks from one water source known to you or your guide to another, equally life-saving one, from one traditional, centuries-used caravan stop to the next. Your thoughts, too, flow smoothly in your head, unhurriedly, almost lazily, like a full-flowing river unexpectedly lost in the boundless desert sands. You often, almost relentlessly, remember your distant, long-abandoned home. Clearly see before your inner eye the dear faces of your relatives and loved ones, your family, who anxiously and hopefully await your return in your native village or small town. You spend a long time thinking about the upcoming important trade deal, mentally calculating possible profit or loss, pondering how exactly your specific goods will be received in that distant, still unseen, but already so desired city, what the prices and customs are like there now. Sometimes this almost unbearable, psychologically crushing monotony of the long, uniform journey is interrupted by some small but always pleasant events. Perhaps a small flock of tiny, gray desert birds will unexpectedly fly right over your caravan with a sharp, piercing cry, rushing to hide from the midday heat in the shade of rare rocks. Or, for one brief moment, somewhere very far away, on the very crest of a high sand dune, the elegant, graceful silhouette of a very shy wild gazelle will flash, only to disappear without a trace in the next instant, as if it were just a fleeting vision, born of your tired imagination. Every such, even the most insignificant, fleeting moment is a small but always significant event that pleasantly enlivens the monotonous, almost lifeless surrounding landscape, briefly distracting you from heavy thoughts and reminding you that this harsh, at first glance, desert, despite all its outward hostility, is actually full of its own special, hidden from the inexperienced eye, but very active life. Your gaze, trained by years of such journeys, is experienced and unusually keen. It almost automatically, without conscious effort, notices the slightest, barely perceptible changes in the landscape around you. It constantly searches the sand or stones for almost invisible to others tracks of caravans that passed here shortly before you, or fresh paw prints of various wild animals, which can indicate the proximity of water or danger. This deep, almost intuitive knowledge of all the desert's secrets, its unwritten but very strict laws, and countless small signs. This is your most important, most reliable guarantee of survival in this harsh, yet in its own way majestic and beautiful world. The long, incredibly hot, and grueling summer day slowly but surely and inevitably draws to its logical conclusion towards sunset. The sun has already shifted noticeably to the western edge of the sky, its rays becoming more slanting, soft, and golden, and the long bizarre shadows from tall sand dunes and sparse prickly bushes lengthen noticeably, stretching out, bringing with them the first, barely perceptible, but so desired breath of evening, refreshing coolness. And then, finally, there, ahead, on the very horizon, where the earth, scorched by the day, meets the cooling sky, appears the long-awaited, almost prayed-for, life-saving sign. It might be an indistinct dark strip of date palms, which always unerringly indicates the proximity of a real oasis. Or it might be just a solitary, known only to the most experienced and oldest guides of your caravan, ancient as the desert itself well, marked on their secret mental maps by some special, known only to them signs. The heavy, leaden fatigue, accumulated in every cell of your body over many hours of continuous travel, seems to recede slightly, dissolving before this joyful, almost childlike anticipation of imminent rest, and, most importantly, life-giving, cool water. The entire caravan visibly livens up, comes into motion. Even the most tired camels, possessing some utterly amazing, almost mystical sense for water, themselves, without prodding, noticeably quicken their pace, impatiently stretching their long necks towards this life-saving mirage that promises them water and food. People, too, begin to talk among themselves a little louder and much more cheerfully than usual. In their voices, hoarse from dust and thirst, notes of genuine relief and anticipation are clearly audible. And then, finally, after some more time on the road, you truly arrive. If it's a real, large oasis, then, after many days of travel through the lifeless, sun-scorched desert, it truly seems to you like a paradise on earth, a promised land. The succulent, bright, almost emerald green of tall date palms, providing dense, cool, life-saving shade. the joyful, incessant chirping of numerous small birds that have found reliable shelter and food here, and, most importantly, most precious of all in the desert, water. It might be in the form of a small, clear spring bubbling directly from under the ground, or a small, reed-overgrown lake with fresh water, or even a whole system of ancient man-made irrigation canals, feeding the date groves and small vegetable gardens. With enormous, unconcealed relief, almost with a groan, you slide off your tired camel's back, or, if you've been walking all this time, you simply stop, breathing heavily, and allow your overworked, aching legs to finally rest. Your legs throb unbearably from many hours of monotonous walking on hard ground, or from long, almost motionless sitting in the high but not overly comfortable camel saddle. Slowly, almost staggering from fatigue, you approach the coveted well or the edge of the spring. Some of your younger and stronger companions, usually people specially assigned for this, are already deftly lowering a heavy leather bucket, woven from thick strips of camel hide, on a long, very strong rope made of palm fibers or camel wool, into the deep, dark, and cool mouth of the old well. The piercing, slightly mournful creak of the old, dried-out wooden windlass of the well, or simply the monotonous, lulling friction of the wet, heavy rope against the smooth, polished by thousands of such touches, stone edge of the well. To the thirst-tormented ears of a traveler exhausted by a long journey, this simple, unpretentious melody now sounds far sweeter and more pleasant than any, even the most exquisite, court music. And there it is, the first long-awaited bucket, full to the brim. Water. Perhaps it looks a little cloudy from a mixture of fine sand or silt from the bottom of the well. Perhaps it's slightly warm from the earth's underground layers, heavily heated by the sun during the day. But it is so desired, so necessary, so life-saving. You, as one of the elders in the caravan, or simply in turn, are poured a full-to-the-brim serving into your traveling clay bowl. With almost sacred reverence, very carefully, so as not to spill a drop, you bring it to your parched, chapped from heat and wind lips. You deeply inhale its fresh, slightly earthy, but so pleasant smell. You take the first, most desired, cautious sip, and instantly feel how this cool, life-giving moisture literally restores life, energy, and strength to your almost completely dehydrated, exhausted body. Each subsequent, unhurried sip is a true, incomparable, almost physical pleasure. You blissfully wet your dust-covered face, neck, and calloused hands with this precious water, feeling how the long-awaited divine coolness washes away the accumulated road grime, sticky sweat, and deadly, leaden fatigue of the long day. The faithful and hardy animals, your indispensable helpers, the camels, are also led to water. They are usually watered first, as the further success of your entire trading enterprise directly depends on their health and condition. The huge camels drink for a very long time, greedily, with visible, almost human pleasure, deeply immersing their large, soft muzzles into specially brought wooden or leather troughs, or directly into the spring itself, if it is large enough. They replenish their enormous vital moisture reserves, which should last them for the next few days of travel. Around this life-saving well or spring, all participants of your caravan, from young to old, gradually gather. Perhaps here, by the water, you have encountered another oncoming caravan, or one like yours, stopped for the night. Then this becomes a wonderful, rare opportunity, not only to rest, but also to exchange the latest, important news from the places they came from, or where you are heading. To learn about the condition of roads and wells ahead, the presence or absence of robber gangs, current prices for various goods in distant cities, or simply to hear some new, interesting stories, tales, and legends from other travelers. People's voices now sound much calmer, more relaxed, and more peaceful than in the morning before setting out. In them, a deep, sincere satisfaction from successfully reaching an intermediate goal, and the pleasant anticipation of a well-deserved, peaceful rest after a hard day are clearly audible. Noisily and cheerfully, with jokes and laughter, the men quickly light a large communal fire from dry, easily flammable saxaul collected along the way, or from sun-dried camel dung, which also burns excellently. Once again, the familiar, cozy, and homely smells of a crackling fire and simple but hearty food being cooked on it appear in the cool evening desert air. Perhaps today it will be a thick, rich, aromatic stew of red or yellow lentils, or crushed barley, with the addition of a small amount of finely chopped, heavily sun-dried meat, jerky, or a few pinches of aromatic, bitter desert herbs collected along the way. This is very simple, unpretentious, coarse food of desert nomads and traders. But after a long, hungry, and tiring day spent on the road under the scorching sun, it seems incredibly tasty, satisfying, and aromatic to you, a true feast of the gods. You eat very slowly, unhurriedly, savoring every hot, mouth-burning piece, every rich spoonful of this stew, feeling how pleasant warmth and long-awaited satiety gradually spread throughout your tired body, bringing with them peace and tranquility. Refreshing evening, and then night, coolness quickly, almost imperceptibly descends upon the rapidly cooling earth after the day's heat. The sky overhead darkens rapidly, first becoming dark blue, then inky black, almost velvety. And on this dark, bottomless canvas, one after another, as if someone unseen is scattering handfuls of sparkling diamonds, myriads of incredibly bright, large stars, as if winking at you, light up. Here, far from the smoky fires, dust, and bustle of large, crowded cities, they seem simply enormous, unbelievably bright, and surprisingly close, as if you could easily reach them by standing on tiptoe. You lie on your firm, yet so familiar mat, wrapped more tightly in your woolen cloak against the night chill, and gaze for a long, long time at them, at this eternal, silent, incomprehensible to the human mind magnificence. And an extraordinary peace, quiet, and a special kind of lightness settles in your soul. A deep, almost mystical, inexpressible feeling of complete union with this ancient, primordial, untouched by civilization world, with these eternal, cold stars, which were silent witnesses to countless thousands of similar caravans and millions of human destinies that passed beneath them, gradually fills your entire being, bestowing a sense of meaning and belonging to something great. Many more days, perhaps even entire weeks, of long, exhausting, monotonous travel through the boundless desert expanses pass. The tiresome, almost unbearable monotony of daily treks, where one day lived is like the previous and the next, like 2 drops of water, or like 2 identical grains of sand, gradually, almost imperceptibly to you, gives way to a new, hitherto unfamiliar, slightly nerve-tingling feeling. It is the slowly but surely growing, almost joyful anticipation of imminent arrival at the final destination of your journey. The most experienced and oldest guides of your caravan, those few who have trodden this ancient, dangerous trade route more than once or twice, begin to speak more frequently and confidently about the large, wealthy city, the goal of your long journey being very, very close. You yourself, looking more closely, begin to notice around you subtle, yet entirely sure and unmistakable signs of the steady approach to inhabited places, to civilization. More stunted, low-growing, yet undoubtedly green vegetation appears in the surrounding desert landscape. The ancient caravan trail you have been following for so long becomes noticeably wider, deeper, and much more well-trodden than before. On it, you increasingly encounter very fresh, clear tracks of other people, hoof prints of domestic donkeys, mules, and even horses, as well as wheel tracks from carts, which you haven't seen for a long time. Sometimes, if the wind blows from the right direction, you can catch a very faint but distinct smell of smoke from numerous domestic hearths, or the smell of manure from domestic livestock in the hot, dry air. And then one day, perhaps very early in the morning, when the air is still refreshingly cool and wonderfully clear, or conversely at sunset, when the long, slanting rays of the setting sun particularly advantageously and vividly highlight all the features of the surrounding terrain, you finally see it. Very far away, almost at the very edge of the visible horizon, at first completely indistinctly, vaguely, like a trembling, unreal mirage born of your tired imagination. The faint, barely perceptible outlines of high city walls begin to slowly emerge. They seem enormous, massive, built of unbaked, sun-dried clay or large, mud-yellow adobe bricks. From a distance, they look like an almost impregnable, formidable fortress, reliably protecting the mysterious inner world of this city from all external dangers and uninvited guests. And there, behind these high, silent walls, a completely different, as yet utterly unknown and incomprehensible life to you, full of its own strict rules, unfamiliar customs, and hidden dangers. Your heart, which, it seemed, had already grown accustomed to the monotonous rhythm of the long journey, involuntarily begins to beat a little faster, stronger, responding to this long-awaited, almost hard-won sight. It seems that very soon, this long, exhausting journey, full of countless hardships and dangers, will finally come to its logical, happy conclusion. But simultaneously, with this joyful, almost childlike anticipation of successful trade, hearty food, and well-deserved peaceful rest, perhaps in a shady caravanserai, a light, almost subconscious yet persistent anxiety, a caution hidden deep in your soul, instilled in you by years of such a dangerous life, also awakens. For a large, unfamiliar city is not only a place where you can very profitably sell your goods brought from afar, and in return buy some things necessary for home or for the next journey. It is also a place where you always need to be especially attentive, extremely vigilant, and exceedingly cautious. Here, you will almost certainly encounter foreign, often completely incomprehensible customs, unfamiliar, and sometimes very harsh laws, and, of course, a huge, noisy, chaotic crowd of completely unknown people, whose true intentions may not always be kind and selfless. Your caravan slowly, with a sense of dignity, without violating age-old traditions, approaches the main, largest city gates, which usually face east. You can already distinguish quite well the individual figures of the few guards who stand motionless on the high fortress walls or keep watch at the gates themselves. Their simple bronze helmets and the sharp points of their long spears glint dully, faintly in the sun. Their stern, unsmiling, attentive gazes slowly, scrutinizingly slide over each member of your caravan, over each heavily laden camel, assessing your strength and wealth. From behind the high, thick walls, a distinctive, characteristic city noise is already clearly audible. The loud, baying bark of numerous watchdogs, the piercing, joyful cries of children playing carefree in the streets, the discordant polyphonic hum of many human voices, which grows louder, more insistent, and clearer as you slowly but steadily approach the city walls. The smells also change drastically, almost unrecognizably, becoming much more complex, intense, and varied than those you became accustomed to during your desert journey. To the familiar, clean, and natural aromas of the boundless desert, and the specific yet now dear smells of the caravan itself and its animals, completely new, unfamiliar, sometimes even sharp and unpleasant city smells begin to actively mix. This includes the sharp, acrid smell of smoke from hundreds or even thousands of domestic hearths, where food is continuously prepared for the city's numerous inhabitants. It's also the appetizing, enticing aroma of freshly baked wheat bread and sweet honey cakes, wafting in waves from numerous open bakeries. It's the spicy, exotic, imagination-stirring smells of rare Eastern spices and expensive aromatic incenses, smoldering in wealthy trading stalls in the marketplace. But also, much less pleasant, yet equally inevitable for any large city, are the smells of rotting household waste accumulating in open gutters along the streets. The smells of stagnant refuse and foul, standing water in shallow ditches crisscrossing the city. The massive, very high and thick wooden city gates, reinforced for strength with wide copper or bronze plates that glint dully in the sun. This is not just an ordinary entrance to the city. It is a real, almost invisible, yet very palpable boundary between two completely different, almost opposite worlds. On one side, almost left behind, was the boundless, harsh, sometimes merciless, yet so familiar and understandable world of the wild desert, where you were always an integral part of a small but very cohesive, almost like one big family, collective of your caravan comrades. On the other, new and unexplored side, a huge, completely unfamiliar world of a large city already awaits you. Incredibly noisy, chaotic, insanely crowded, full of both incredible, breathtaking opportunities for an enterprising person, and many hidden, treacherous dangers and traps for an unwary stranger. You take a very deep, slow, almost ritualistic breath, mentally steeling yourself and gathering all your strength before taking this decisive, important step into this new, as yet completely alien reality. Your caravan slowly, with great difficulty, but maintaining outward calm and dignity, squeezes through the narrow opening of the massive city gates, finally leaving behind the hot dust of endless desert roads. And immediately, in that very instant, as if diving headfirst into a cold, turbulent, and swift mountain river, you find yourself in a completely different, unfamiliar, almost surreal world. Incredibly narrow streets, constantly twisting like snakes, where even two modestly laden donkeys can barely pass each other, let alone your enormous camels. These streets are densely built up with unprepossessing, yet quite sturdy, mud brick or adobe houses, which press tightly, almost adjacently, against each other, forming continuous, monotonous, yellowish-gray walls without a single gap. The deafening, polyphonic noise of the city literally crashes down on you, almost knocking you off your feet, after many days or even weeks of the almost absolute, ringing silence of the voiceless desert. It's the piercing, insistent, sometimes even slightly aggressive shouts of numerous street vendors, who in every possible way, in different languages and dialects, praise their simple wares and desperately call out to their modest stalls, or simply to mats spread on the ground for the rare and therefore so desired customers. It's the loud, infectious, guttural laughter of a group of men gathered at the entrance to a small, dark tavern or beer house discussing the latest city news. This laughter is punctuated by the disgruntled, escalating into hysterics wailing of some capricious, spoiled child, whom his tired, exhausted mother struggles to drag by the hand through the dense crowd. The piercing, plaintive bleating of a whole flock of goats and sheep, driven by their grimy shepherds with loud shouts and cracks of whips to be sold at the main market square, mixes with the deafening, ubiquitous cackling and clucking of hundreds of chickens, which roam freely right under the feet of passers-by, searching for edible crumbs in the dust. From the numerous dark and cramped artisan workshops opening directly onto the street, where craftsmen work in full view of everyone, comes an almost continuous deafening, rhythmic pounding of heavy hammers on red-hot metal, the monotonous, lulling whir of a rapidly spinning potter's wheel, the measured, calming creak of a primitive loom on which a woman weaves bright fabric. The air here, unlike the clean and fresh air of the desert, is very thick, heavy, almost viscous to the touch. It is filled to the brim with an incredible, dizzying mixture of thousands of most diverse smells, both quite pleasant and appetizing, and frankly sharp and even repulsive. Here is the sharp, nostril-tingling, appetizing smell of freshly grilled juicy meat or just caught river fish, which mixes with the no less tempting, intoxicating aroma of still hot, just out of the oven wheat bread, and sweet honey or date syrup-soaked flatbreads. Here are the spicy, exotic, imagination-stirring smells of rare and expensive Eastern spices: cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, cardamom, and the heavy, sweetish aromas of precious aromatic incenses, slowly smoldering in special censers in the dimly lit shops of wealthy foreign merchants. But right next to them, these pleasant aromas are mercilessly overpowered by much sharper, yet equally inevitable for any ancient, densely populated city: smells of slowly rotting household waste and food scraps, which careless city dwellers throw directly onto the street or into open gutters running alongside houses. Smells of stagnant human and animal waste and murky, almost black, foul water in shallow, silted ditches that lazily crisscross the city in different directions, serving simultaneously for irrigation and sewage. This is the real, living, breathing to the fullest ancient Eastern city, eternally seething, bubbling with irrepressible energy, full of bright, dazzling colors and striking, sometimes shocking contrasts. Your caravan, very slowly, with great difficulty, literally pushing its way through dense throngs of people and domestic animals who are in no hurry to yield the way, advances along these narrow, jam-packed streets. You are heading towards a large, walled inn, specially designated for visiting out-of-town and foreign traders, a caravanserai, or directly to the main, busiest market square of the city, where most of the wholesale and retail trade usually takes place. Numerous passers-by, busy with their own affairs, reluctantly, with visible displeasure, make way for your enormous, heavily laden camels, which occupy almost the entire width of the street. They watch you with long, curious, and sometimes openly wary and unfriendly gazes. Some of them look with unconcealed, almost childlike admiration at your exotic, previously unseen animals, and the clearly rich overseas goods you have brought. Others, on the contrary, look with obvious, poorly concealed suspicion and apprehension at you, unfamiliar, armed strangers, who have come from who knows where and with what intentions. Noisy, ragged, barefoot street urchins run in a whole gang behind your slowly moving caravan with loud, joyful cries. They shout something incomprehensible and unintelligible in their local guttural dialect, and brazenly try to beg a small copper coin or some edible treat from you, tugging at the edges of your clothing, with great, unconcealed interest, but also with unwavering, now habitual caution. You look around, trying to memorize as many details of this new, unfamiliar place as possible. Your practiced gaze repeatedly encounters completely amazing, previously unseen goods displayed for sale in numerous shops or directly on the ground. These are bright, iridescent with all the colors of the rainbow, finest silk and brocade fabrics from very distant, almost mythical Eastern lands. This is skillfully, with great mastery, made copper, bronze, and even silver tableware with the finest, intricate chasing and engraving. These are countless gold and silver ornaments sparkling in the sun. Rings, earrings, bracelets, necklaces, inlaid with large, bright, precious, and semi-precious stones of all shades. These are whole mountains, towering on the counters, of previously unseen exotic, juicy fruits, nuts, and outlandish sweets. Your eyes literally dart around from this incredible, almost unreal abundance, variety, and wealth. But your main, primary goal now is by no means idle curiosity, and gazing at all sorts of curiosities. You need to find a safe and convenient place for a prolonged rest for your people and your animals, exhausted from the long journey as soon as possible. And, most importantly, you need to immediately begin thorough preparations for the upcoming trade, the success of which determines the well-being of your family and your tribesmen. You very attentively, intently peer into the faces of the numerous passers-by scurrying past you, trying to find among them familiar faces of merchants or trade intermediaries with whom you may have already dealt during your previous visits to this city. Or, if you are here for the first time, you try purely intuitively, by some elusive signs, to understand which of these local residents you can safely approach for help or sound advice, who among them looks sufficiently solid, reliable, and respected, and whom it is better to avoid. And so, finally, after many hours, perhaps even entire days of long, sometimes incredibly tiring and tense negotiations, after mutual, very thorough and meticulous inspection of all the goods you brought and those offered to you in exchange, after heated, sometimes borderline quarrelsome, disputes and discussions of final prices and all the conditions of the upcoming exchange, comes the most important, most responsible, almost solemn and sacred moment, the official, legally binding conclusion of your long-awaited trade deal. Here, in ancient, wise Mesopotamia, this is by no means a simple, symbolic handshake or some verbal, unsubstantiated agreement, sealed only by the vague, honest word of the contracting parties. No. Here, in the cradle of civilization, everything is much more serious. Everything is done according to strictly established, inviolable, centuries-proven rules. Everything must be duly, officially recorded in writing, both for the information of possible descendants and, more importantly, for the fair resolution of any possible disputes and misunderstandings in the future. You and your new trading partner, with whom you have just reached an agreement, are respectfully and deferentially brought to the local city or temple scribe. This is, as a rule, a highly respected, educated, and often quite influential person in the local urban society. He is usually dressed in clean, carefully pressed, light linen clothes, and his entire demeanor in public is imbued with a sense of his own undoubted dignity and importance. His long, slender, well-groomed fingers, perhaps only slightly stained with fresh, not yet dried clay or dark, almost black ink. These are the inevitable traces of his daily, painstaking, and very responsible work. He usually sits importantly at his low but comfortable wooden table, on the smooth surface of which all the necessary tools of his unique, almost magical craft are always neatly and orderly arranged. These are several sharply pointed at one end, sturdy reed or bone styluses of various thicknesses and shapes. These are the very famous styluses with which he inscribes cuneiform signs on clay. And nearby lies a small, neat stack of still damp, soft-as-dough clay tablets of standard rectangular size, specially prepared and purified of impurities for making important records. You explain in detail, clearly, and without excessive emotion to the scribe sitting before you the entire essence and all the main conditions of your just concluded trade deal. You tell him exactly how many sacks of choice barley or wheat you are selling, or exactly how many painted clay wine jugs you are exchanging, at what specific, finally agreed upon price, or for what specific other goods you are exchanging them, and in what quantity. You give the full name, and, if important, the clan or tribe of your trading partner. You are also obliged to indicate the names and origins of all witnesses, if any were present at the conclusion of your verbal agreement or during the inspection of the goods. The scribe listens to you very attentively, without interrupting or asking unnecessary questions, his face remaining completely calm, impassive, and inscrutable like a mask. Sometimes, if something seems unclear or ambiguous to him, he may ask a few short, clarifying questions to thoroughly clarify for himself all, even the most insignificant, details of your deal. Then, when all the details are clarified, he takes one of the fresh, still damp, and therefore very pliable clay tablets. With unconcealed, almost childlike curiosity, and even with some reverent awe, you watch attentively as his skilled, well-practiced hand confidently, quickly, and very precisely begins to cover the smooth, even, slightly glistening from moisture surface of this tablet with even, neat rows of some tiny, very complex-looking, wedge-shaped signs. Each such intricate, multi-component sign is actually a whole word, or at least a separate syllable, or some important concept, or an exact number. For you, a simple, illiterate merchant, this whole complex act looks like real, incomprehensible to the simple mind, almost divine magic, secret knowledge accessible only to a few chosen and initiated. But you, nevertheless, know perfectly well that these small, unprepossessing-looking, clay-impressed signs possess enormous, almost sacred, indisputable power. They are the frozen, immortalized word. They are the unbreakable, sacred law. You hear a quiet, barely discernible, slightly moist, scraping sound made by the sharp tip of the stylus as it presses into the soft, pliable clay, leaving a clear, deep mark. The scribe works with complete, absolute concentration, his movements precise, economical, and honed to the millimeter. He very carefully, without the slightest haste, scrupulously records on this small clay tablet every, even the minutest, detail of your important transaction. The full names, and if known, the exact origin, city, clan, tribe, of both contracting parties. The exact date of the transaction, usually indicated by the current year of the local king's reign or some other important, well-known event, such as a major flood or the construction of a new temple. The exact quantity and detailed description of the goods being transferred, as well as, if important, its grade or quality. All pre-agreed terms and deadlines for payment or exchange of goods, and any other, even the most insignificant, special agreements, mutual obligations, or guarantees of the parties. Having finished writing and carefully checking what he has written, he may, if you politely ask him, slowly, loudly, and very clearly read aloud to you everything he has just recorded on the tablet, translating the enigmatic and incomprehensible cuneiform signs into simple, familiar, and understandable words of your native language or the commonly accepted trade dialect. When the entire available surface of the clay tablet is finally filled with neat, even as if ruled rows of these mysterious cuneiform signs, clear, deep, well-distinguishable impressions of personal cylinder seals are made on it, in a specially left free space at the bottom or side, first yours, and then your new trading partners. These small but very important cylinder seals, which every self-respecting merchant or nobleman always carries with him, are often made of durable semi-precious stone, e.g. lapis lazuli, carnelian, or agate, or hard metal, bronze or silver, and are always decorated with a unique, inimitable, very finely carved pattern or image on their surface. They serve at that time as a kind of analog to the modern personal signature, and are irrefutable proof of your mutual, voluntary consent to everything stated in this important document. Sometimes, to ensure special strength and durability, such a freshly inscribed clay tablet is then very carefully and gently fired in a special pottery kiln at a high temperature, after which it becomes hard, durable, and almost eternal, like stone, capable of being stored in archives for many centuries without damage. This small, unprepossessing at first glance, but so priceless to you piece of well-fired clay, covered with incomprehensible cuneiform signs. This is your official, legally certified contract, your most important, indisputable proof of your rightness in case of any dispute. It will be very carefully stored either in a special city archive, usually located at the main temple or in the ruler's palace, or one copy will remain with you and your trading partner, as an inviolable, sacred testimony of a trade operation conducted honestly and according to all rules, with deep, genuine respect and even some superstitious awe. You look at this freshly made, still warm from firing or still raw and damp clay tablet that the scribe hands you. In these small, almost indistinguishable, completely incomprehensible to you signs, as in a magic mirror, is encapsulated the entire essence and result of your arduous, danger-filled work, the outcome of your long, exhausting, and often very risky journey through the merciless desert. They are your most important, most reliable guarantee that all your honest, hard work will not be in vain, that you cannot be cheated or robbed with impunity. All this seems to you so incredibly reliable, so thorough, so strong and unshakable, like the mountains themselves. It is a visible, almost tangible manifestation of the slow, but so just, predictable, and understandable to you order of things in this vast, ancient, yet already so civilized world. The daily life of an ancient Mesopotamian merchant, a simple and hard-working man like you, was undoubtedly filled to the brim with numerous, almost daily difficulties, constant dangers, and all sorts of domestic hardships. These included endless, incredibly exhausting day treks under the mercilessly scorching, life-incinerating sun, or under the bone-chilling, icy night cold of the boundless desert. It was the very meager, monotonous, often unappetizing food, consisting mainly of coarse, stale barley flatbreads, a handful of dates, and a small amount of heavily sun-dried, almost stone-like meat. It was the constant, unceasing inner tension, and the absolute necessity to always, every minute, be on alert, to be ready for any surprise, so as not to become easy prey for numerous robber gangs roaming the roads, or simply not to lose your way and die of thirst in these boundless, silent sands. But even in such an incredibly harsh, almost unbearable life, full of daily trials and deprivations, there was always a place for its own special, small, almost imperceptible to the outsider's eye, yet so important and dear to the heart quiet joys, for its modest yet so effective comforts, which, like life-saving lights in the night, helped you not to lose heart, not to despair, to find new strength within yourself to move forward, day after day, week after week, month after month, towards your goal. This, for example, could be that incomparable, truly divine, unforgettable taste of ice-cold, crystal-clear, slightly sweet water from some tiny spring unexpectedly encountered on your parched path, lost among bare rocks or sands. Especially after many long, agonizing days of unbearable, soul-tormenting thirst and the strictest rationing of the last precious drops of warm, stale water from your leather waterskins. That inexpressible, almost ecstatic sensation of absolute bliss and rebirth, when every drop of this life-giving cool moisture you swallow seems more precious than all conceivable treasures of the world, when you almost physically feel how it instantly restores strength to your exhausted body and long-lost clarity to your muddled thoughts. It could also be a quiet, peaceful, almost idyllic evening by the communal, merrily crackling campfire, when after a particularly hard, long, and tiring day's trek, you finally sit on the warm earth, still retaining the day's heat, with your faithful companions, proven by time and danger, and feel a pleasant, sweet fatigue throughout your weary body. The dry, resinous branches of saxaul or another desert shrub crackle rhythmically and very cozily in the bright flame, cheerfully dispelling the thickening night darkness and the encroaching coolness from all sides. And right above your heads, so close it seems you could touch it, stretches the bottomless, like eternity itself, velvety black dome of the night sky, generously strewn with myriads of incredibly bright, large, as if winking specifically at you, distant stars. And then one of your older comrades, possessing a pleasant, albeit slightly dust-hoarsened voice, begins to softly, more for himself than for others, hum some old, well-known to you all since childhood, slightly sad, but so touching song about a distant, abandoned homeland, about green fields and full-flowing rivers. Or another companion, the most experienced and talkative traveler in your caravan, begins to unhurriedly, with pleasure and numerous details, tell some amazing, breathtaking story, or an ancient, instructive legend, which he once, very long ago, heard in some very distant, almost fairy tale-like, overseas lands, or which a gray-bearded sage told him in one of the caravanserais. And in these rare, precious moments of complete peace and relaxation, you feel with particular acuity, almost to the point of tears, this priceless, irreplaceable feeling of deep community, unbreakable camaraderie, silent but so important mutual support, which warms your tired soul much better and more reliably than any, even the hottest, fire. It was, of course, also a successfully, profitably completed major trade deal. That special, exciting, almost triumphant moment when your goods, brought from afar, from the other end of the world, with such difficulty and risk, are finally duly appreciated by buyers, when you receive in return exactly what is so vitally necessary for your family, your native village, or your tribe, be it several full-weight sacks of choice grain, enough for the whole winter, or new durable agricultural tools, or bright, beautiful fabrics for festive clothing, or even several head of cattle. This deep, incomparable, intoxicating feeling of complete satisfaction from a job well, honestly, and skillfully done. From the proud realization that you were once again able to overcome all imaginable and unimaginable difficulties and dangers of such a long and unpredictable journey, and ultimately, successfully, honorably achieve your set goal. It could also be the incredible, primordial, almost unearthly beauty of the harsh but majestic world around you, suddenly revealed to you like a flash of lightning. This beauty sometimes appeared before your astonished gaze completely unexpectedly, at the most ordinary, unremarkable moment, when you least expected it. For example, it could be a majestic, breathtaking sunset over the silent, boundless desert, when the huge, crimson sun, slowly and solemnly descending behind the distant, jagged horizon, painted the sand dunes, sparse clouds, and the entire sky in utterly fantastic, unreal, constantly changing colors, from tender pink, peach, and golden orange to blood red, rich purple, and deep, dark violet. Or it could be some modest, almost unnoticeable, yet surprisingly resilient and beautiful in its simplicity wildflower, which by some incomprehensible miracle managed to push its way to the light through a thick layer of dry, cracked, almost stone-like earth, and proudly unfurl its delicate, velvety petals towards the merciless, scorching sun, as a symbol of an indomitable thirst for life. Or it was the proud, swift, almost silent flight of a mighty steppe eagle or falcon high in the bottomless, transparent, bright blue sky, a symbol of freedom and strength. These were those rare, precious, almost mystical moments of enlightenment when you involuntarily stopped, rooted to the spot, froze in place, and simply watched, wide-eyed, forgetting all your worries, anxieties, and fatigue, keenly, almost painfully feeling yourself a tiny, yet integral part of something immeasurably vast, eternal, incomprehensible, and inexpressibly beautiful. And, undoubtedly, one of the strongest and most constant comforts for you was the thought of your distant, yet so dear home, warming your soul like a cup of hot wine. Of those dear and close people who, with immense impatience, anxiety in their hearts, and a prayer on their lips, await your safe, swift return from this dangerous journey every day. This bright, pure thought, like a shining lodestar in the dark night, always gave you additional strength, helped you to endure stoically, uncomplainingly, all the countless hardships, deprivations, and adversities of such a difficult, nomadic, trading life. You often, especially during long, lonely evenings, closed your eyes and very vividly, in all detail, imagined that so desired, so joyful moment of your future meeting. You almost physically saw before your inner eye the happy, radiant, slightly tear-stained from joy smiles of your beloved children, who would rush to throw their arms around your neck, the gentle smile of your faithful wife, who had waited and prayed for you for so many months, and the wise, kind eyes of your old parents, who would be proud of you. All these small, almost imperceptible to the outsider, but so important to you joys, all these quiet, modest, yet so effective comforts, like rare but very bright, warm lights in the pitch-black, cold night of a long journey, always illuminated your arduous, danger-filled path in life. They gave deep, enduring meaning to all your incredible, sometimes superhuman efforts and countless deprivations. They are the very priceless salt of this so difficult, so harsh, yet so real, event-filled, and deeply meaningful, the only possible life for you. And so, my dear, weary from the long journey friend, our large, unhurried caravan has finally, after all the trials, reached its ultimate, so desired destination. All the goods that you brought from very distant lands with such enormous effort and considerable risk have been successfully and profitably sold in the bustling city market, or exchanged for other, no less valuable and necessary goods. The ancient clay tablets, covered with complex rows of cuneiform signs, those silent keepers of history, will now be carefully stored in city archives or in your travel bag, as irrefutable evidence of your diligence, enterprise, and impeccable honesty. You, our unseen companion today, the ancient, wise Mesopotamian merchant, are perhaps already busily packing your new, just-acquired goods and mentally, with expertise, carefully preparing for an equally long, uncertainty and danger-filled return journey back home. Or perhaps you have finally allowed yourself to relax a little and rest in the relative comfort and safety of a bustling, yet so hospitable to all travelers caravanserai, slowly gathering new strength and restoring your depleted energy before new, unexplored wanderings and unpredictable adventures, which capricious and fickle fate undoubtedly already has in store for you. Your simple, uncomplicated life was measured and very unhurried. It was inextricably, almost mystically linked to the natural, eternal rhythms of the nature surrounding you, to the annual change of seasons, to the ancient as the world cycles of major and minor trade routes that were laid across these lands by your distant, brave ancestors. It was filled to the very brim, without remainder, with almost daily serious challenges, constant difficulties, and hidden dangers, but in it, always, in any, even the most desperate situation, the quiet, persistent, almost indomitable as a rock strength of the human spirit, will and patience was invisibly present. You were that almost invisible, often underestimated, yet so incredibly important connecting link between very distant, sometimes warring cities and completely different, dissimilar peoples and tribes. Your calloused, scar-covered feet tirelessly, year after year, measured the dusty, endless, sun-scorched roads of the vast ancient world. And your strong, work-roughened hands transported across deserts and mountains not just some soulless goods and objects, but also priceless, invisible to the eye particles of other distant cultures. New, progressive ideas, important practical knowledge, and invaluable human experience. Perhaps your simple, unknown name was never carved in golden letters on high, majestic stone stelae, alongside the names of mighty kings and pharaohs, nor was it mentioned with reverence in lavish royal chronicles and annals, like the names of glorious, invincible commanders or wise, all-knowing high priests. But your modest, almost invisible to contemporaries, yet so significant and important to history trace is forever, indelibly, like a deep pattern on stone, woven into the complex, multicolored, intricate tapestry of world history and human civilization. It was people like you, simple, inconspicuous, hard-working little people, who with their daily, monotonous, almost unnoticed, painstaking, and honest labor like ants, built the strong, unseen foundation of all future great civilizations. They patiently and persistently, year after year, century after century, created those very fine, almost invisible, yet incredibly strong threads of mutual trade, cultural exchange, and simple human communication that slowly but surely bound together the vast, fragmented, and sometimes mutually hostile ancient world. Think for a brief moment, my friend, about the incredible, almost superhuman resilience and amazing endurance of these simple, long-gone people. About their astonishing, almost incomprehensible to us modern folk ability to find some deep, higher meaning and even a special, austere, primordial beauty in the most ordinary, monotonous daily routine, in the constant, exhausting overcoming of themselves and unfavorable external circumstances. Their simple, uncomplicated, deprivation-filled, yet so real life is an eternal, ageless reminder to all of us, their distant descendants, that even the most mundane, most modest, at first superficial glance, deeds and actions, if only they are performed with due diligence, with absolute honesty, and with sincere, genuine love for one's work, always have their enduring, immense value, and will necessarily leave their good, albeit not always immediately noticeable, mark on this world. And as you listen to these my final, lulling words, allowing them to gently, tenderly, and very carefully envelop your consciousness, like a warm, fluffy blanket, and smoothly, imperceptibly carry you away into the distant, magical world of serene dreams and sweet slumbers, try to imagine for a brief moment how that very ancient, wise Mesopotamian merchant, your unseen, yet so kindred in spirit companion today, also unhurriedly, with a sense of duty fulfilled, settles down for his well-deserved night's rest. Perhaps he is again, as many times before, lying directly on the bare ground under the boundless, dark, star-strewn sky of the harsh desert, listening attentively to the quiet, mysterious nocturnal rustles and sighs of slumbering nature. Or perhaps this time he has found temporary but reliable shelter in the relatively safe, yet always so noisy and crowded inner courtyard of a large caravanserai, somewhere in the heart of an unfamiliar foreign city. He slowly, with relief, closes his eyes, tired from the long day, and his intermittent, heavy breathing gradually becomes more even, calm, measured, and deep. He completely, utterly lets go of all the numerous cares, anxieties, and worries of the past, event-filled day, trusting himself entirely to the wise, unhurried, and eternal flow of almighty time. He knows with unwavering certainty that tomorrow, with the first ray of sun, a new, completely different day will surely dawn, which will undoubtedly bring with it new, unexplored roads, new, interesting encounters, and, of course, new, bright hopes for the best. May this deep, all-pervading silence, this all-encompassing, almost blissful feeling of absolute peace and complete tranquility remain with you for a long time, throughout the coming night. May they gently, like a mother's hands, envelop you from all sides, like the softest, warmest, and coziest blanket in the world, and very carefully, almost imperceptibly, carry you away into the magical fairy tale world of calm, bright, joyful, and utterly serene dreams. Rest well, my dear, tired friend. Sleep peacefully, sweetly, and very deeply, and until new, equally quiet, tranquil, and atmosphere of the past-filled meetings in our future joint, unhurried journeys through time. A calm, good, peaceful night to you.